apprentice friends can't help you. I'll pick them off one at a time.
Yeah, I'm also a ton stronger than each of you, so...
We won't be coming for you one at a time.
But are you stronger than all of us?
Season 2 of Fate the Winx Saga is, I suppose, God, or the Great Dragon, teaching me to be careful what I wish for. This show felt like I was feverish in bed and was hallucinating what Season 2 of Fate would be like based on my assumptions about Brian Young. Which is disappointing because I was actually really excited to see where they took it, given that they seem to have been receptive to feedback. The consensus seems to be that Season 2 improved on the first, and I suppose it's because on an aesthetic level, the show has attempted to course correct and to conform to a vision closer to what fans expected. However, in the process, it has abandoned its own integrity and consistency as a story. We've ended up with storylines and characters that feel disconnected and incoherent. In this video, my goal is to take a few of these case studies that in my opinion demonstrate the wider issues with this season. I want to show you the problems that seem to be repeating throughout this series through these characters and plot points. I'll be generous and say the creators behind Fate were stuck between a rock and a hard place coming into this season. As in, either they were going to give the audience massive whiplash by suddenly attempting to become a more sincere adaptation, or they were going to risk further controversy by committing to the tone and storyline they've set. Alas, it's nothing they didn't do to themselves, so I don't feel bad criticizing them for it. So yes, dearests, this is very much a critique. For this video, I am choosing to focus on the issues I still see in it, and I am saving my positive impressions for my rewrite of Season 2, where I will be able to expand on them as plot points. I just need to get some of this stuff off my chest before I can get creative and indulgent. So if you're really enjoying the show and don't want to see your 526th put down of it, maybe skip this one for mental health. Or if you are committed to watching, please hear me out until the end and let's talk about it. I promise I will try to inject some more positive thoughts throughout. Let us begin with Rosalind. See, here's what I mean. Despite the disrespect, despite the audacity, people really like the first season of Fate the Winx Saga. And yet, we start Season 2, and none of the plot threads set up in Season 1, the promise of emotional moments we were baited with, the characters that were introduced, get any follow-through. It's confusing. And how little Season 1 matters for the overall plot is no more evident than in the handling of Rosalind. Firstly, Rosalind is functionally no different to Flora. Okay, let's play a game. I'll read out a description, you tell me who it fits. The headmistress of Althea, an upright, rigid older woman, strict but effective in her teaching, seemingly emotionless but secretly caring. She keeps secrets from her students with the belief that it will protect them. She may have a morally grey past, but is ultimately working for the greater good. Respected by her colleagues and a motherly influence over Bloom, she may be ruthless, but she gets the job done. You get 5 seconds. At this point, I'm confident in asserting that the team behind Fate know only how to write one type of adult woman. We are continuously told that under Rosalind's regime, the school has become a darker, grittier place. But this is not evident at all. It's a general issue with the tone, which I'll get to, but this season dedicates a lot more time to frolicking, for lack of a better word, which is not a bad thing at all. I think most people enjoyed that. But this was something that wasn't as much the case last season, and because the narrative has now made space for more of these lighter moments, it ends up feeling like the school environment itself really can't be that bad. One minute they're talking about students going missing, the next they're all badgering Aisha about her crush. One minute Rosalind's methods are basically torture, but the next, the new uniforms are sexy though. You're not really selling it to me, Bloom, sweetie. What we have is a woman we keep being told is terrible and menacing, yet there is little evidence for it. She takes care of Bloom and her friends, allows her boyfriend to sit with her, teaches her how to eat at a fancy dinner, pardons Silva, cares about Andreas, and all through it she's honest and clear that she has her own intentions. I mean, Rosalind even tolerates attitude from students when Dowling would never. At this point, her only villainy has been killing Flora, and functionally, the Rosalind that did that is a completely different character to the Rosalind we have this season, which is not helped by the fact that they are played by different actresses. And yes, she is trying to manipulate Bloom, but this part is never really allowed to play out. There is no time for it. What's really funny about Bloom wanting to get the school back to the way it was is that halfway through the season she basically gets her wish. Silva is back, Rosalind is Flora, Andreas is dead, and there's a creature attacking the school. We're going through the motions, but the status quo has not changed at all. So, I don't know if you can tell, but I actually quite enjoyed Rosalind in the show. She is played by an actress I really like. Same with Queen Luna, actually, I really love Kate Fleetwood. And the inconsistencies behind her character could have been allowed to develop into the nuances of a much more psychologically threatening villain. Which is kind of what they were going for, I think. They just didn't have the time for it. I will acknowledge that the biggest problem this show has is actually time/budget, with which a lot of the issues in this video could be solved. However, I don't find this a good enough excuse for bad writing and direction. If you know you are working in a quote-unquote smaller space, you should aim to write a more concise story. It's creatively irresponsible to not observe that. I wonder if Rosalind's death should have been the ending point for this season, with the plot lines that lead up to it being allowed to develop properly across 7 episodes, and with the name reveal for Sebastian Valtor as an exciting tease at the end. Tone and colour. I think I may end up pissing people off with this one. I feel as though they misunderstood what was meant as criticism for the tone of the show. Saying it's too dark and edgy doesn't mean moments of significance shouldn't be afforded the gravity they deserve. Dark and edgy was in reference to Bloom setting her mum on fire, or Sky yelling "F that," or Ribbon getting high and talking about fucking gingers. There are plenty of moments of great tension and gravity in Winx, but the overall tone is light and friendly. It's more about excitement than edge. Oh hey, the Winx are having this epic battle against the snow monster. Oh no, they're trapped. Oh cool, never mind, the specialists to the rescue. Now conversion spell, woohoo, super cool. It makes you feel good at the end. It hypes you up. I don't know what Fate makes you feel like. I mean, you tell me. Consider the prison break in episode 1. It's completely flat. There's absolutely no tone to it. Not even maraudery, mischievous. Oh hey, me and the gang about to break out a war criminal. Isn't this exciting? No. No fun cool music, no car chase. And it lasts all of 2 minutes. This is really serious. This is 5 schoolgirls about to break a murderer out of the custody of the most powerful realm in the otherworld. I'm not saying it has to be heavy and grim, just, you know, the Winx sneaking out of school for a mission. Woohoo, like the good old days. Instead, the lack of emphasis at all given to this scene is baffling. It brings such little energy and it sets no real tone for the season as the opening move. It just feels like we're going through the motions. This is a repeating issue this season, with moments that should be significant, but are just rushed through, like we're just trying to get them out the way. It's the same thing for the colours of the show. We were complaining about the lack of life and dullness. And okay, maybe this is me, but whilst it was dull, I did enjoy the darker colour palette. The moody autumn vibes were nice. Now it's sunny all the time, even when it is discordant. And yes, I know this time it's set in the spring term, but like, oh hey, me and the girls having a picnic in the sun and chatting about breaking out a war criminal. The tone is not just an issue with the show as an adaptation, it's also to do with it as a story, as storytelling. We keep being told that everything has gotten so much worse since last season, and yet visually, we're being told it is so much better. It's discordant. Because storytelling is not just words, it's not just what happens, it's the ambience, the environment, the weather, the colour. I'm sure we've all suffered a literature class before, you know this too. I think, at least on my part, my complaint was the dullness. Even when it is dark, you're allowed to put life into every scene, put some fun little details in the environment. They were attempting that last season already. Those little fairy things in the woods, the light playing in Farrah's office. In every scene, you could have a little something, a little light play, a little creature, bubbles blowing, something to make this a convincingly magical dimension. Maybe flowers bloom as Terra goes by, or they turn towards Stella because she is the Sun Princess. And you can keep it dark and moody, but still play with colour. It can still pop. And look, they know how to do this already. This was charming. Or the dinner scene, that's lovely. Now, tone and direction are all over the place. It feels like a fan project, like Twilight without the blue filter. Yes, they did this as a response to fan criticism, and maybe some people will feel that this is me refusing to be pleased. But I think even within that, you have to honour your commitments. You've set a mood and tone for the show from the start. Commit. You can build on it, but it's not right to give your audience so much whiplash. In my own rewrite of Season 1 and my ideas for Season 2, I also had the idea of introducing Flora at a somewhat divergence from her original character. Basically, my concept was that if the show were to introduce Tecna, Flora, and a new Musa, you couldn't just plug them in there. There would need to be an in. So I suggested bringing them in as minor villains, a new Trix of sorts. I didn't go into this, but my concept for them would have been based on the versions of the Trix from the comics. Basically, the comics are in an AU, and back in the day, the Winx and the Trix would often collaborate on projects and missions, whilst retaining a competitive enmity. And this was my concept for introducing new characters into the story, including Flora. The reason I felt that I needed to do this was that Fate was already quite clunky in how many protagonists it had, and how little time it was given to explore them. And my worry was that if one was to introduce, Flora, as a new friend of the group, what would have to happen was for the plot to stop.
Hello, Flora.
For the new character to be introduced and explained, for them to promise you how good friends they all are now, and then the plot would resume unaffected. That's what I was trying to avoid. The introduction of Flora in Season 2, well, unfortunately it was kind of exactly what I expected. You know those fanfics that are just word-for-word copies of the original text, except they superimpose their OC onto it? It's like, it's Harry, Hermione, and Ron making some Polyjuice version. And oh hey, it's Galatea, Gloriana, Jezebel, the Slytherin, piping in every now and then with a sassy comment. And that's how Flora feels in this story. The narrative keeps floundering for an excuse for why Flora is in any scene at all. Even the characters know she's out of place. In response to the backlash the show received for whitewashing, they brought in Paulina Chavez as Flora. However, Fate Flora, just like everyone else, has nothing to do with Winx Flora. Which is even stranger when she has nothing to do at all. You could redistribute all her scenes to other characters and it would have zero impact on the plot. If anything, her final sacrifice might have felt more meaningful from a character we have gotten to know and whose relationships with the others are better established. That is the problem. Consider Aisha and Season 2 of Winx. The introduction of Aisha immediately brings movement to the plot. It becomes the driving force of the season. Her appearance at Althea is the inciting incident. It very much remains Bloom's story. Bloom is still the main character. However, a new character is introduced and given life, story, and stakes of her own. The storyline doesn't just pause so we can adjust to a new character, no. Aisha and what she brings are the storyline now. You couldn't take her out. Flora's introduction in season 2 is literally an interruption to the plot. They have to pause, the story has to stop, so that they can tell us about this new character. They could not think of a way to bring in Flora as a driving force, as an integral part of the story, as a function within the plot. Or, more likely, they could not be bothered. It feels as though Terra's role in the story has been split into two, giving neither much to do. I'm pretty confident in this because of the Eldwin amalgam situation. Even within the storylines she's participating in, she's not allowed to carve out a place for herself. No, she's just superimposed onto other people's storylines. She's essentially decoration. And this is supposed to be them apologizing for whitewashing. It's disappointing. I will give credit where it's due, and Paulina does make a charming addition to the cast. I just wish that this character was given storyline and personality traits of her own. I mean, her interests so far are gossiping, chemistry, vines, which were all Terra's thing last season. So, Beatrix dearest, take a note on your clipboard. If we're going to move forward, Flora needs story. Thank you. Speaking of Beatrix, Beatrix's death felt like a slap in the face. This is your one OC that people actually really liked. I'm so confused that they killed her off. In general, I'm really frustrated by the misuse of Beatrix this season. In season 1, it was my impression that if he wasn't getting distracted by his inability to write female friendships, Mr. Young was setting up quite an interesting dynamic regarding Beatrix and Bloom. In general, Bloom and Beatrix had a lot of duality and two sides of the same coin energy around them. They were both adopted, motivated by the urge to find their birth families, both outsiders to Althea, both under the influence of an older matriarch, both much more powerful than average, both sharing Astadel in their past. It definitely felt as though this was a main character obstacle character setup, and therefore Beatrix's evolution into the full villain to Bloom's hero felt natural. This wasn't just in the plot, it was also in the visual composition, no more obvious than in the exploration of the map room, the dark and light twins. But I guess I really was hallucinating it. Bloom and Beatrix get no interaction this season. Beatrix, ruthless enough to kill her accomplice last season, is reduced to a lost schoolgirl. Don't get me wrong, I really liked Bea and Stella growing closer together. It's nice to see that they saw that tweet too. And ultimately, you could have both. Have Beatrix be a manipulative villain, and yet yearn for close friendships. But you'd need time to explore it, which you don't have this season. I originally thought that the twist was going to be that Beatrix was actually a blood witch. And as the stealing magic plot of the season evolved, I felt supported in that at first. She was a blood witch who had been given stolen magic as a baby. Rosalind had found these two babies, taken the fairy to the first world where she knew she would be safe, and given the one she suspected to be a witch to Andreas so that someone could keep an eye on her, a play on changeling dynamics. This is consistent with what we were told last season. Beatrix refers to Astadel as a happy place, and Rosalind burns the memory of its destruction into her mind, clearly with a purpose. Presumably it has meaning to her story. But this season, she is just another kidnapped baby. Once again, no follow-through on anything. Instead, Beatrix in the last few moments of the show is thrown at every scene for a plot twist. We need a dramatic reveal for who betrayed the school. It's Beatrix. Oh no, who's following Stella in the forest? It's Beatrix. Who is going to stop Bloom from self-destructing? It's Beatrix. Who is going to die as a cheap emotional beat at the end of this season? I mean, it's Beatrix, guys. It's Beatrix. I think the biggest miss in this season was not exploiting the Sky Beatrix-Andreas dynamic. Such a missed opportunity, and a perfect example of how nothing is allowed to matter in this story unless it directly relates to Bloom. At the end of last season, Sky found out that his father figure, the most significant influence in his life, killed his birth father, his hero. Only to find out his actual father didn't die, but chose to never make himself known to him, and instead raised someone else. We keep being told that he is affected by this, but we are never shown it. We never get any resolution to this at all. Sky and Andreas never really bond. Andreas doesn't even get any last words. Sky runs back to Saul only once his father dies, but they never actually talk it through. And the weirdest of all, I think that Sky and Beatrix only have one scene together where Sky is a total dick, but he's the good guy and Beatrix is the villain, right? Why do you set this up as a dynamic if you're never going to explore it? A much more productive way to use this would have been to set up some kind of storyline between Beatrix and Sky. Perhaps Sky is trying to get closer to Beatrix, trying to live Andreas' parentage vicariously through her. Maybe Saul and Andreas bond over Sebastian's betrayal of Saul. Maybe Sky finally gets two daddies. I don't know, there's just a lot you could do with this. This storyline could have been one of the driving forces of the season, but no. Andreas' death is not used to develop Sky or Bee's character, but as a bonding moment for Bloom and Rosalind.
All about me.
Stories are not like real life. Yes, in real life it makes sense for Beatrix, for example, to be confused about her origins, for what she originally thinks and what we find out to not match. But within a story, it's different. When Beatrix calls Astadel a beautiful place, or when Rosalind burns the memory of its destruction into her mind, that is a setup. But it's a setup that gets forgotten about. Occasionally, visions for a story can change, that's quite normal. But if it keeps happening, it is actually a serious issue with the writing and direction. And unfortunately, this season, there are at least 3 big setups that just get abandoned. Sebastian Valtor. Look what they did to my boy. Sebastian is such an unthreatening villain. And once again is just another boring stale-bred OC that got a name slapped on him so that we could pretend this is an adaptation. Don't get me wrong, I actually quite like the actor, and I could even get on board with the character as a villain. I think he's quirky. But they did themselves no favors by evoking Valtor. Valtor in Winx is the coolest villain of them all. His interactions with all the characters are sexually charged. You'd think a show intent on displaying underage sexuality would jump on it. His reasons for doing the things he does are just pure evil. He is motivated completely selfishly, and he is not a leader who cares. He simply inspires devotion through manipulation, through taunting the tricks with reciprocation, and by feeding the villainous urges of people who are useful to him. Instead, we end up with this. I have to wonder with how quickly and suddenly the Rosalind plot gets dropped, whether or not Rosalind was originally intended to be the big bad of this season, but they wrote in Valtor at the last minute as a result of fan condemnation. She was the one stealing fairy magic for a darker purpose, and the scrapers were her method. But then they had to figure out a way to fit Valtor into the story, and that's why what we hear about Rosalind and how she actually is by plot necessity is so inconsistent. They're from different drafts. I feel supported in this because there are a whole bunch of elements about Sebastian that also don't come together. His obsession with the 90s never comes to anything, his relationship with Saul is never explored, and he spends the first half of the season going out of his way to help Bloom investigate Rosalind and the Blood Witches. And yeah, you could say he's stalling for time, he is distracting Bloom. But at one point he literally does background checks about every single member of this catering company. Why go this far as a villain? And more importantly, why waste your already limited storytelling time on this? Baiting us with Rosalind only to give us surprise Valtor is cheap storytelling. It doesn't mean you have a clever twist, it means you haven't taken the time to set up your dynamics. Valtor in the context of the Blood Witches is a strange choice. I wonder if there's a better reference they could have made. The Blood Witches themselves never really feel like a threat. Beyond Grey, we don't really get to know them or get a sense for why they're doing what they're doing. Nothing about the Blood Witches is explained properly, really. They are apparently the old enemies of fairies, according to Luna. Or apparently Rosalind hates them so much, and that's why she wants to start a war, which is why she killed Farah. Yet she tolerates Bhavani having old guard Blood Witch contacts, whatever that means. They even let Grey go at the end, even though at the very, very least he was assisting in the physical mauling of human beings. I wonder if the simpler choice would have been to have Sebastian as a standalone villain with a few flunkies, rather than leading an army of, squatters? It's really funny that they have ambient lighting though, I enjoyed that. I also want to talk about Bloom's powers themselves for a second. The Dragon Flame. It keeps being yelled at us like we're meant to know what it is. Every little thing not being explained is not a plot hole, but this one requires an explanation. Because everyone, including Bloom, who grew up in the first world, knows what it is, but we, the audience, don't. In the original Winx Club, the Dragon Flame is essentially creation power. It's God source. In the beginning, there was nothing. And then the great dragon appeared, and where he breathed fire, the stars were born, and around them the planets formed. Finally, the dragon became tired and picked a planet to rest, and that planet was Domino. And the people of Domino carry his magical essence, the Dragon Flame. But, before you trick yourself into thinking that, yes, that is the Dragon Flame, just remember that these fairies are Christians. See, this is something that's bothering me. Fans of Fate want fans of Winx, and there's overlap obviously, to give Fate the space to be its own thing, its own entity, and ask us to stop comparing the two. But this is so insincere. This show completely relies on your prior knowledge of Winx, whilst refusing to respect the source material. You've probably never even noticed it, but they never explain what a specialist is. I'm sure some people didn't even notice that they didn't explain what the Dragon Flame is, because they are Winx fans. They are familiar with these concepts. And that's what makes it so disingenuous, so two-faced. Because not only are you relying on Winx fans because you're exploiting their nostalgia for profit, but also because you are relying on their knowledge of the original material to cover up your shoddy world building. I'm sure if you're really enjoying the show, it's really frustrating to hear the constant comparison and for people to constantly demand their own vision for a live action be fulfilled. But you also can't pretend that if I take off my Winx vision glasses, suddenly I'm looking at what was secretly a great story all along. This story and world building would crumble to bits if not for Winx in the title. Conclusions. Okay. So I think what we've done here is established three main problems with the story. Firstly, repeatedly throughout this show, there are elements and storylines that are sometimes hinted at, other times set up, only to get no follow-through. Not even to mention characters that get completely abandoned or forgotten about, R.I.P. Francesca. And this is a shame because sometimes what they're doing feels quite clever and subtle, and suggests depth and thought unexpected from a cash grab teen show. And okay, you could accuse me of overreading into things and then being disappointed when they don't deliver what I expected. I will give you that. But that only means that I should be giving this show even less credit than I am. I feel like I'm being punished for paying attention and for getting excited and wanting to speculate about the show. What this all hints at is that either they don't really seem to have a concrete vision of the story beyond where they think Bloom's origins lie, or that somewhere between Season 1 and Season 2 there was a radical change in vision, most likely as a way of trying to satiate angry fans, which all professes a frustrating lack of commitment to the project. Secondly, and not unrelatedly, this show really truly has no sincerity for the source material and resents its fans for having asked it to stay loyal to the original. We can see this in the introduction and handling of a beloved character, the lack of effort put into carving out a place in the story for her as a character they've done wrong by already, and the evident resentment for her, which is really ugly given that this is their only other POC protagonist since Dane got all but written out. We can see it in the inclusion of the show's most popular villain and the fundamental misunderstanding of what made said villain so appealing. Between Sebastian the Terrier and Valtor, there are chasms, and it's just kind of funny. At least that's entertaining in its own way. And finally, we can see it in the disdain for Winxy conventions and the absolute avoidance of them. They just can't resist taking jabs at the original. Look, I'm sure it is no more the cynical nostalgia cash grab than the next Netflix series, but I haven't seen the next Netflix series. I just watched this one because Winx was in the title, and I had a very simple expectation of it as a result, that it would be an adaptation. I guess that's my fault. Thirdly, in all of this, it has been implicit, but I haven't talked about it yet. No matter what Mr. Young says, this show is not about the origin story of a friend group. It is very much the story of his overpowered wild Mary Sue and his visions for her origins. This is why all these characters have nothing to do except react to Bloom. That's why the introduction of a new character was not allowed to bring momentum to the plot, because Bloom as the main character must not be overshadowed. She must remain the sole driving force of the story. That's why she insists on doing things repeatedly by herself this season, and whilst everyone else orbits around her, she herself is never involved in the emotional beats of anyone else's life. And that's why no one else is allowed any real plotline about self-actualization that does not relate to relationships. That's why characters that have no real influence on her in a landscape are just dropped or killed off, despite obvious ways to take their storylines. This story just wants to be about Bloom, and it doesn't really know what to do with anyone else. And I guess, in its own way, that makes it kind of a fun nod to the original. That's all for now. I hope that you can see that I was trying to be balanced about the show, about giving value to original elements it introduced, as well as the Winx elements. I was critical of Season 1, but also there were things I liked about it, and I feel a little let down that they didn't commit and build on those things, because they were too busy trying to course correct. And maybe some people will feel that this is me refusing to be pleased. But I don't see it that way. It was about having sincerity for both the source material and this new premise. That being said, I am bursting with ideas for my rewrite, and I'm going to be talking about what I actually liked about this season in that video. I expect that this time my rewrite will be less grounded in the show and a bit more unhinged and self-indulgent, since I got the criticism out the way now, for the most part. There will still be little things, obviously, because it is a rewrite, but of course I will be focusing on plot points I want to develop. But considering how long it took to get this video out, I will probably do a shorter video in between, maybe even 2. If I haven't talked your ear off yet, maybe I shall see you next time. Bye.